I've sold everything and left with Nathan. Michelle's voice came through my surgical earpiece during a complex heart surgery. After 19 years of marriage, she was ending our life while I was fighting to save one. I stayed focused, completed the procedure, and quietly said, "I understand." What Michelle didn't know was that the assets she'd just liquidated were in medical malpractice protection trusts. And my response would cost her everything. My name is Frank Cordova. I'm 48 years old and I'm a cardiac surgeon at St. Michael's Medical Center in Denver, Colorado. The call came at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday while I was performing a triple bypass on a 62-year-old construction worker whose family was praying in the waiting room. Michelle knew my surgery schedule. She knew I'd be unreachable for hours, hands deep inside someone's chest cavity, focused entirely on keeping another human being alive. She chose that moment deliberately when I couldn't argue, couldn't reason with her, couldn't even hang up without potentially killing my patient. The earpiece I wore during long surgeries was for emergencies only. Hospital communication, family medical crises, life or death situations. Michelle had convinced the charge nurse it was urgent. "Frank, I can't do this anymore," she said as I carefully sutured a coronary artery. "I've been unhappy for years. Nathan and I are leaving for Costa Rica tonight." My hands never stopped moving. 19 years of surgical training had taught me to compartmentalize, to function under pressure while personal disasters unfolded around me. But inside, my world was collapsing. "The house closed this morning. I sold your cars, emptied the investment accounts, everything. I left your clothes in storage unit 247 on Colfax Avenue. The keys under the mat at home." I finished the bypass, checked my work twice, and signaled to my team that we were ready to close. Only then did I respond. "I understand completely. That's it? That's all you have to say?" "I'm in surgery, Michelle. We'll discuss this later." But there would be no later, and we both knew it. What Michelle didn't understand was that after 19 years of marriage to a surgeon, she should have learned something about preparation, attention to detail, and understanding exactly what you're operating on before you make the first cut. I met Michelle in 2005 during my residency at Denver General. She worked in hospital administration, handling insurance claims. We connected over late-night coffee breaks and shared frustration with the healthcare system. Michelle understood my career demands from the beginning. The 80-hour weeks during residency, emergency calls, missed dinners, and canceled vacations. She said she admired my dedication to saving lives. We married in 2006, bought our first house in 2008, and settled into the rhythm of a medical marriage. I worked long hours, Michelle managed our household, and we built what I thought was a stable life. The first signs of trouble appeared around 2018. Michelle complained about my schedule more frequently, making comments about normal couples and work-life balance. "I feel like I'm married to a ghost," she said during one conversation. "You're here physically, but your mind is always at the hospital." Around 2020, Michelle started finding ways to fill her time. She joined a hiking club, took photography classes, and began traveling with friends while I was working. That's when she met Nathan Rodriguez, a travel blogger and outdoor adventure guide who led some of the hiking trips Michelle joined. Nathan was 35, unmarried, and lived what Michelle called an authentic, uncomplicated life. I noticed changes in Michelle's behavior over the past year. She became secretive about her phone, started talking about living more adventurously, and questioned our financial priorities. "Why do we need such a big house?" she asked one evening. "Why are we saving so much money? What's the point of having all these assets if we never enjoy them?" These conversations made me uncomfortable because they revealed a fundamental misunderstanding about our financial situation. As a surgeon, I faced significant liability risks. Medical malpractice lawsuits could potentially wipe out everything we'd worked to build. 3 years ago, I'd restructured our assets into protection vehicles. The house was owned by a family limited partnership. Our investment accounts were held in domestic asset protection trusts. Even our cars were titled under a limited liability company. These weren't schemes to hide money from Michelle. They were legitimate legal structures designed to protect our wealth from potential creditors. Michelle had signed all the paperwork, but I wasn't sure she fully understood the implications. After my patient was stabilized and transferred to recovery, I drove home to find exactly what Michelle had described. Empty rooms, missing furniture, my personal belongings gone except for basic clothes left in our bedroom. I called the storage facility and confirmed that Unit 247 contained several boxes with my name on them. Then I called my attorney. "Frank, I need you to walk me through exactly what Michelle said about selling assets," Patricia Walsh said when I reached her that evening. I repeated the conversation verbatim. Patricia was quiet for a moment. "Frank, she can't sell the house. It's owned by the family limited partnership and she's not a general partner. She can't liquidate the investment accounts because they're held in trusts where she's a beneficiary, not a trustee. But she said everything was sold, that transactions had already closed. Then either she's lying or someone sold assets they don't legally own. Either way, we have a serious problem." Patricia agreed to investigate immediately. Within 24 hours, we had answers that were worse than I'd imagined. Michelle hadn't actually sold our house. She'd signed a sales contract, accepted earnest money, and told the buyers they could close immediately. But when the title company ran their due diligence, they discovered she didn't have the authority to sell property owned by the family limited partnership. The investment accounts were a different story. Michelle had somehow convinced our financial advisor that she needed emergency access to funds for medical expenses. She'd withdrawn $340,000 from accounts that were supposed to be protected by trust structures. The cars had been sold to a dealer who specialized in quick cash transactions. Michelle had forged my signature on the titles, claiming I was traveling, and had given her power of attorney. What Michelle didn't realize was that every one of these transactions left a digital trail, and several of them constituted fraud. "Frank," Patricia said during our emergency meeting, "Michelle has committed multiple felonies: wire fraud, forgery, theft of assets held in trust. The question is whether you want to pursue criminal charges." I thought about the 19 years we'd spent together, the life we'd built, the person I'd thought I'd married. But I also thought about the patients whose lives I'd saved while Michelle was systematically destroying everything I'd worked to build. What are my options? We file police reports and let the system handle the criminal aspects. Simultaneously, we pursue civil recovery of all assets that were illegally transferred. And we make sure Michelle understands that her actions have consequences. 2 days after my surgery from hell, I was sitting in my empty house when my phone rang. Michelle's number. "Frank, there's been a misunderstanding about the house sale. The title company is saying I don't have authority to complete the transaction." "That's because you don't." "What do you mean? We bought that house together. My name is on everything." "Your name is on the original purchase documents, but if you'd read what you signed 3 years ago, you'd know the house is owned by a family limited partnership. You're a limited partner. You can't sell assets without the general partner's approval." Silence. Then, "But the investment accounts, I already moved that money to my personal account. Money that was held in trusts where you're a beneficiary, not a trustee. Withdrawing trust funds without authorization is a felony." "You're trying to scare me." "I'm trying to explain the legal reality of your situation." If watching cheating spouses discover their elaborate escape plans were built on quicksand makes your day, hit subscribe, because Michelle's about to learn that stealing from a surgeon was the worst diagnosis of her life. Michelle's voice became desperate. "Frank, I didn't know. Nathan said these were normal divorce procedures, that I had every right to the money." "Nathan advised you on legal matters?" "He helped me understand my options. He said you were probably hiding assets and that I needed to act quickly to protect my interests." Nathan, the travel blogger, had apparently convinced Michelle that she was entitled to liquidate assets she didn't legally control. His expertise was about to cost both of them everything. "Where are you now?" "We're in Costa Rica. Nathan found us a place near the beach. We were planning to use the money to buy property here and start a tour business." "With stolen money." "It's not stolen. It's marital property." "Actually, it's trust property, and removing it without authorization is theft. Costa Rica has an extradition treaty with the United States, by the way." The next week brought a series of revelations that painted Michelle's betrayal in even darker colors. The financial advisor who'd released trust funds had been duped by forged documents claiming I'd authorized the transfers. The car dealer had been shown fake power of attorney papers. Even the earnest money from the house sale had been deposited into an account Michelle had opened using false information. But the most damaging discovery came when Patricia's investigation revealed Nathan's background. He wasn't just a travel blogger and adventure guide. He was Michelle's former high school boyfriend who'd reconnected with her through social media 2 years earlier. Nathan had been tracking Michelle's life through her posts about feeling lonely during my long work hours. He'd deliberately inserted himself into her hiking group and slowly rebuilt their teenage relationship, convincing her that I was the reason she felt unfulfilled. The FBI investigation revealed that Nathan had been planning this theft for over a year, studying our financial situation through Michelle's casual social media posts about our house, cars, and lifestyle. He'd coached her on exactly what to say to the financial advisor, and even helped her practice forging my signature. Michelle hadn't just betrayed me. She'd been systematically groomed by someone who'd known her vulnerabilities since they were teenagers and had spent 2 years exploiting them for financial gain. Michelle called me from Costa Rica 3 weeks after her dramatic exit. "Frank, I need help. Nathan disappeared with all the money. I'm stranded here with no way to get home." "Where's the $340,000 you withdrew from our accounts?" "Nathan said he was investing it in property for us. I gave him power of attorney to handle the transactions. Now I can't reach him and the money's gone." I felt anger and sympathy. Michelle had betrayed our marriage and stolen from our family. But she'd also been victimized by someone calculating. "Have you contacted local authorities?" "They say it's an American legal matter. They can't help me recover money that was transferred voluntarily." "What do you want from me, Michelle?" "I want to come home. I want to try to fix this." "There's nothing to fix. You made your choice when you decided to destroy our marriage and steal our assets." "I was manipulated. Nathan convinced me you were hiding money from me, that I needed to act quickly before you filed for divorce." "So you chose to trust a stranger over your husband of 19 years. I hung up and stared at my empty house. The life Michelle and I had built together was gone, destroyed by her choices and Nathan's manipulation. But unlike Michelle, I still had my career, my assets, and my integrity. The legal resolution took 6 months. Michelle eventually returned to Denver, where she was arrested on multiple fraud charges. She pled guilty in exchange for cooperation in the federal case against Nathan, who was ultimately sentenced to 12 years in prison for running romance scams across 5 states. Michelle received 3 years probation and was ordered to pay restitution for the assets she'd illegally transferred. Since the money was gone and she had no way to repay it, the court garnished her wages from the part-time administrative job she found after our divorce was finalized. I kept the house, the remaining assets, and my medical practice. More importantly, I kept my reputation and my ability to continue saving lives without worrying about someone systematically destroying everything I'd worked to build. A year after that surgery day phone call, I was reviewing patient charts when I received an unexpected email from Michelle's sister, Karen, whom I hadn't spoken to since the divorce. "Frank, I know you probably don't want to hear from our family, but I thought you should know what really happened with Michelle and Nathan." We met for coffee the next day. Karen looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with her purse before finally pulling out her phone. "Michelle never told you about her and Nathan in high school, did she?" She mentioned they dated briefly. It wasn't brief. Nathan was her first love, and he broke her heart senior year when he left for California without telling her. She was devastated for months. Karen showed me old photos from her phone. Michelle and Nathan at prom, laughing at graduation parties, looking like the perfect teenage couple. When Nathan contacted her on Facebook 2 years ago, it wasn't random. He told her he'd always regretted leaving, that losing her was the biggest mistake of his life. Michelle was vulnerable because of your work schedule, and Nathan knew exactly what to say. So this was about rekindling an old romance. It was about Nathan needing money. His adventure business in Costa Rica was failing. He owed money to local investors and needed a way out. Michelle was his solution. Karen explained that Nathan had convinced Michelle she deserved better than being married to someone who cared more about patience than his wife. He'd systematically isolated her from friends who might have questioned his motives. Michelle really believed you were going to leave her for someone younger. Nathan convinced her that doctors always trade in their wives for newer models once they become successful. The manipulation had been even more personal than I'd realized. Nathan hadn't just exploited Michelle's loneliness, he'd weaponized her deepest insecurities about our marriage. That evening, I drove through the neighborhood where Michelle and I had planned to grow old together. Our house looked the same from the outside, but inside it felt like a museum of a life that had never really existed. Sometimes I wondered if I could have done things differently. Worked fewer hours, been more emotionally available, recognized the signs that Michelle was vulnerable to outside manipulation. But then I remembered that surgery day, fighting to save a stranger's life while my wife systematically destroyed mine. I remembered the trust I'd placed in someone who'd chosen betrayal over communication. The assets Michelle had tried to steal were eventually recovered through insurance and legal action. My medical practice continued to thrive, but the most valuable thing I'd lost couldn't be replaced: the ability to trust someone completely with my life and my future. In the end, Michelle's timing couldn't have been worse for her or better for me. By forcing me to compartmentalize during surgery, she'd given me the emotional distance to think clearly about her betrayal rather than react emotionally. Michelle had gambled everything on Nathan's promises and my inability to fight back. She'd lost both bets, and the price was everything she'd tried to take from me.